Well, if the cornhole gear behind him did not give it away, my guest today has played a big part in the explosion of the sport. More and more of it is being seen on television. Everybody seemingly is playing, and it's in large part to my guest, and Fred Boucherle, who is Chief Operating Officer at American Cornhole League. But he's a man of many talents. It doesn't stop there. He has other things that he's really good at. And we're going to focus on his story here, his come up in the business, what he is like, and what he's got going on with cornhole and the surge that is having in markets across the world. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and with Tennis Channel. Fred, I am stoked to have you on. This is going to be a fun chat about you and everything you're working on.
Brian, I appreciate you having me on. I listened to your podcast and your interviews, and I think you do a great job. And heck, many of my colleagues and friends that I've known over the years have been on your show. So I guess it was just my turn.
Finally, you are here, which has been something that I've been dying to have you on for a while. And our schedules finally were able to align. Let's start here. Why do people love working for you?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that properly, but I love to work with people. I always have, and that's why I'm in this business. It's collaborative. Television's that way. Sports is that way. I could never sit in a cubicle and work in a vacuum. That's for sure.
You have
I love
this.
mentoring people. I love seeing young people come up through the ranks and excel. But I love discovering great talent.
What goes into the process for you in discovering that great talent? What are you looking for? What are your antennas focusing on?
Well, there's a lot of things that skills can, one can come with skills, but there's some basic traits that I look for. But a lot of it is attitude. I always like to say attitude equals altitude, and attitude is so much of what we do, and the ability to work with other people and to communicate with other people and function as a team, I think is critical. What we do is not brain surgery, and we're not, curing cancer, so to speak. And so I like to allow for people to ask questions, explore, always be curious, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
You get a lot of altitude in flying drones. What does this added part of who you are in drone flying, what does that satisfy within you that you don't get anywhere else?
Oh boy, you're hitting me to the core now, Brian. Well, I got to tell you, I've always had a passion for photography. My father, although he was a mechanical contractor, was a photographer in the U.S. Marine Corps, and always had a camera with him. And I grew up like that, and the same with me. And I ended up, in fact, getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at the University of New Mexico in photography and fine arts, kind of a double major, but I've always enjoyed photography. And I taught it for many years. And when I found out about drones and discovered that technology, which is just amazing, that the engineering and the technology that goes into those drones is just amazing, really. And but for me, it's a camera platform. So that's what really appealed to me about flying drones and working with drones, is getting that perspective. It's amazing how things change when you just get 20 feet above the ground. But of course, when you get higher, it's even cooler. But it changes your perspective. And I like to use that analogy a lot when I talk to people, because really, you get so focused in on your own perception and your own focus, and you don't see what's around you sometimes. And just to get a little bit above it, or get a little bit outside your comfort zone, can do a world of good sometimes. You can open your eyes.
Well, needless to say, Fred, American Cornhole League is not only off the ground, but it's in cruise control right now. And a big reason why is you. And I want to sort of plunge into your mind, because you're a guy who finds solutions and you love problem solving. I could just pick that up from our conversation and we talking before, but you're somebody who really thrives in those settings. Where do you find that your mark has been most made in cornhole and its ascendance?
Boy, you do ask good questions. I appreciate that. And you really did cut to some of my most passionate interests, and that is in problem solving. I love to solve problems, and I like to think of myself as an innovator in that way, and looking for new ways to discover to solve problems. And of course, technology and really plays a large part in that. But when I first started talking to Stacy Moore, who's the founder and commissioner of the ACL about 4 years ago. And the ACL really only has been started since 2016. So it seems like it's been around a lot longer. But I've been involved going on 3 years now. And I have been involved in television sports for my entire career, which spans decades. And just about every sport that's out there, I've had some involvement in. Of course, stick and ball, of course, and a lot of tours and gymnastics and Olympic style sports. But I was fascinated when I heard from a good friend of our mutual friend of ours, Kerry Glotzer, who's the CEO of Tupelo Honey, introduced me to Stacy and said, I really think this is somebody you'd like to know. And I started meeting with Stacy and getting together with him for lunch and now and then, and became fascinated, intrigued by what he was doing and starting. I had just come off some work I was doing with Major League Gaming out in New York, along the esports and video game side, and seeing that league grow and being there from the start in 2005, and really seeing the trajectory that sport took and that league took, gave me a lot of insight into, in general, how one can grow that sort of enterprise. And when Stacy and I started talking, it was clear to me that he was at the early stages of really launching the American Cornhole League. And I saw a vision of what he was talking about, where his goals were, but also what I could do for him. And I was very excited about being able to have that opportunity to take so much of what I've learned over the years and apply it to something new and burgeoning as cornhole is. And I like to say that to myself personally, I'm a bit of a reluctant or frustrated athlete. I play a lot of sports. I'm not good at any of them, but I'll get up and play just about anything. But cornhole was one I hadn't tried yet, and I love to see the players. This is part of why I'm in sports. I appreciate athletic competition. I appreciate the discipline that goes into being good at what you do from an athletic standpoint, a sports standpoint. And this is one of the things that attracted me to cornhole, really. The tagline is anyone can play and anyone can win. And it's that kind of every man kind of sport, every person kind of sport that really appealed to me. But I've been on a fast track ever since I landed here a few years ago. I'm working harder than ever, which I love. But I'm creating new opportunities for the league and building out new infrastructure around their tournaments and events.
What is the best compliment, Fred, you can receive when you're going to these new events and you're creating these new events, when you have competitors come up to you and say what they think about where this thing is going and what you've done?
Well, I just want to make a difference in a good way. And I love to apply my knowledge. I get called sometimes the old guy or the guru of the group. And certainly I bring a lot of knowledge and firsthand experience, but when I can make a change and make an effect and make a difference is really what matters to me. This league now, we're up to over 20 events this coming season, over 30 hours of linear television and over 150 hours of streaming. When I first came on board here 3 years ago, there was no streaming. What was being streamed was basically coming out of cell phones. I built a couple streaming ports utilizing some robotic or PTZ cameras and some relatively simple workflows, but basically designed live streaming ports. And I've designed and built 3 or 4 of them now, and working on the next iteration going forward. So the live streaming piece has been a big part of it. What happened during COVID was interesting and affected a lot of sports organizations. In fact, we were getting ready to set up one of our big national tournaments up in Cleveland, Ohio, on March 13th. I think that was Black Friday, but it was basically we had it all set up, and 11:30 that night before opening the doors the next morning, the governor said he was shutting us down. And we packed up and went home, and we weren't sure what was going to happen next. Well, what happened next was something very interesting and unusual, and that was that our partner and still partner on broadcasts, along with other networks, is ESPN. And as we all know, basically live sports shut down after that day. And but we found a way to keep going, and we found a way to keep going because cornhole, frankly, is a sport that we could social distance and have COVID protocols around and still play the game. With the mask, of course, with social distancing. I mean, the boards are 27 feet apart, and not having crowds. So we were able to provide content, live sport content, when nobody else can, with environments that we could control. And all of our TV production was what we call home base or Remy production. So it was being sent back to in this case, the folks at Tupelo Honey and their facility up in Indianapolis, and put together there. So the minimum amount of people on site. But we got the call from ESPN, and our friends there said, we've got some pretty good spots opening up on the main channel. If you guys are interested, we'd like to bump you up and put you there. Well, we raised our hand and got out on the road and started producing events, and it got us a lot of fans that I don't think we would have normally reached in our typical distribution footprint over ESPN and ESPN2. But it really did put us forefront and up front in terms of getting in front of people that didn't have anything else to watch, frankly. I was in Fort Worth about a couple months ago, I guess it was, doing an event there, and was in a hotel bar and having a cocktail after a hard day of work, or a beer. And a gentleman came up to me and saw my American Cornhole shirt on, and he said, "You're with the American Cornhole League?" And I said, yes, I am. And he said, "Well, I got to tell you something. You guys saved my life." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "When during COVID and there was nothing on TV and I was pulling my hair out and going crazy and couldn't leave the house, there were you guys with cornhole." And there's something very entertaining, certainly, but also kind of meditative about watching cornhole being played. Just the back and the forth. And it's an easy game to follow. It's an easy game to relate to. And I think satisfied a lot of people's needs and urge to watch live competition going on during that time. But it gave us a great opportunity, and we've been riding on that and using it, certainly attracting a lot of fans in the process.
It's interesting that you brought up that little story, because I go back to the best compliment that you have received from somebody who is aware of what you're doing, and that has to be at the top there when you have somebody come up to you and say that. And for you, Fred, it's got to be interesting, and I would be interested in exploring this dynamic of you working in something that you're very passionate about. Your work can also be your escape. It's an escape for so many. But what is that like, doing something you love, but also you're getting paid for it, but it's also an escape? And so those two worlds are colliding together.
I thrive on it. I mean, I always have. I got in this business in the beginning because of my passions for all things visual, and photography led to film and led to video, and it's just been a thread. And I've always gravitated toward opportunities like that, but particularly opportunities, and this is why I think in sports and not entertainment. I love the performing, or not me personally, but the events that I produce and create and manage in front of live audiences. That's a rush that only live audiences can give, and I'm sure we've all heard from entertainers over the past couple of years when that hasn't been going on a lot, how much they miss it. Well, it does get in you, and I think it's a lot of pleasing people, seeing people happy, messaging, important messaging across channels, and sports always done that for me as entertainment. So a lot of the sports that I've been involved in, the events I've been involved in, are more or less created for the more consumer, or more your everyman or every person kind of consumption. So a lot of made for TV events, a lot of events that use sport to message about important and difficult topics. I created a series of figure skating events called Kaleidoscope that was specifically designed to bring awareness around cancer survivorship with some funding from some of the larger pharmaceutical companies that had marketing dollars and wanted to get that message out. But here was a sport that cancer had touched many of the sports stars, be it Dorothy Hamill or Scott Hamilton. And there were great opportunities to engage people in watching a sport and at the same time talking about important things that are going on in their lives or in their health and messaging around that. So it's a lot of it's being able to use sport as a way to not only entertain but communicate in a fun and entertaining and exciting way. I like to say it's always, for me anyway, at least from a competitive standpoint, it's our America's original reality TV.
How has being involved in sports over the course of your life led to so much self-growth for you in your experiences, whether it's playing, whether it's setting up a production or growing a league, but all of these things, how has the sports concept in itself allowed you to grow in ways in which you could not even imagine, maybe looking back?
Well, I'd like to take credit for that. It's certainly been through on the shoulders of many others that have helped me along the way or taught me things along the way. But it's really that has what has promoted myself. I'm not a very good promoter of my own work, and that's probably typical of other people as well, perhaps. But the main thing for me, and that's why I like to work behind the scenes, behind the camera or off the stage, so to speak, is because I get to enjoy more and have a better perspective of where I can make a difference and how I can affect that change and get people excited and interested about the content that's being put out there.
From making a difference, from someone like yourself who was always taking the pictures as the photographer, if there were still shots of you not taking the picture, but you being in the picture of you making a difference, what am I going to see of you? Where are you going to be? What's that going to look like?
Well, it's funny you mention that because as much as I say I don't like to be behind the camera, I ended up being on the camera a lot this past season. And when we didn't have a lot of the fans at our events, and because of protocol and COVID, and then recently, when Stacy hired me and I came on board as a chief operating officer, I said, well, you're going to get a photographer with me and a drone operator because that's what I do and those are passions I have. So it's going to kind of come with the package. And so I ended up, because one of my favorite angles in shooting cornhole is directly across the court along the line of the boards. So I get the shot of the players throwing the bags right at me. One of the things I've always loved about doing sport photography is capturing the intensity and the feelings of the players through their expressions. So I like to get in tight and I like to see their faces. So I end up being behind the board, straight in front of where they're shooting. Well, that's usually where the camera, one of the cameras at least, is facing there as well. So I end up being on the screen a lot behind with my camera taking pictures. So I gotta tell you that my mother, I think she's become my biggest fan over the last couple of years because I don't live close to her, and that's a way for her to see me and connect with me. So she'll call me up and, I saw you on the TV and you look great and this and that. So it's kind of put me more in the spotlight than I'd like to be. But it's been fun nonetheless.
What about not being in the spotlight? You're very humble, so I get that. But what about it is, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but where this started, where you're all about others before yourself, and like you don't want to take the credit. Like, how far back do you trace that mentality? Because I see that it's coursing itself one step to another wherever your career
you.
your life took you?
Well, it's a lot of really wanting to. It comes from teaching. I love to teach. I've got a background in that, and I've taught my kids how to do photography, and I've taught others how to do projects and work on photography. But I just get a lot of satisfaction out of it. I get much more satisfaction out of seeing somebody else excel and do well than I do it myself. It makes me feel good. It warms my heart, so to speak, especially when I feel like I've had an impact on them or had some influence on that. I did a hire recently who said that was the best boss she'd ever worked for. Well, I
Oh,
took that to heart, and that really meant a lot to me. And when I asked her why she felt that way, she said because I let her do what she wanted to do, in a sense. I give people I work with the room, not the rope, sometimes the rope, to really be able to explore their own passions and their strengths, and for me to recognize what those strengths are, what those skills are, and make sure they're being channeled in the right way, having the right position. So putting people in the right position with the right skills and watching them exceed is really one of the great joys of my career.
and it's that recipe that is easy to see why, for example, right now, American Cornhole League is thriving because you are empowering people and you take so much satisfaction and joy in that. And then it reflects back on you, even though you're not one to step into the spotlight because of your humility and your love of growing up those around you and building up those around you, which I hope that as we wrap up this conversation, Fred, that we were able to canvas and show that this is not something you're used to. You're usually the one taking the shot, but there are stories to be told to inspire people and reasons to celebrate you, even though that's not what you're interested in, but to show people what you've done and your team and American Cornhole League. That's what I wanted to get to. And the way in which you lead is something that no wonder you're having the, I guess, collaborative genius like processes of which has expanded ACL since the moment you took it. Fred Boucherle, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks for doing this, man. This was a neat chat as we sort of plunged into your mind and learned about how you function and what matters to you and what brings meaning to your life.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do that, and what's happening here now and where we're going in the next year at the American Cornhole League is very exciting. We are introducing. Well, this is the second year that we're having teams, so we're branching out, and we've got some great things going on there. We've got our broadcast deal with ESPN, of course, and with CBS Sports Network, where you'll see our teams competition. So I hope everyone can tune in and watch some of that. But I'm very excited about what's ahead right now.
I can't wait as well. Thanks again, Fred. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bryan. It's a pleasure.